Story 1. Hi, me 21-year-old male and my fiancé 20-year-old male have been dealing with his mother 56-year-old female, who is the entitled parent in this story. Some background information to help explain. My fiancé, who I will refer to as T, lost his father at a young age due to a brain tumor. He was only 10 when his father passed away, so for the past 10 years, it's just been him and his mom. His mom has controlled a lot of aspects of his life, down to keeping his medication and not allowing him to explore other options for treatment. T has fibromyalgia and suffers from anxiety to the point of vomiting when he tries to travel. He had a really traumatic experience with his father's death. So much of his anxiety is rooted in medical situations and the concept of loss itself. Despite knowing this, his mother has consistently shown what she calls tough love, which to her means little to no empathy and constantly pushing T to do things he's not capable of handling. When he lived at home, he would cook for her, clean for her, make her bed, walk the dogs, feed the dogs, make her coffee whenever she asked, look after his grandmother, do the laundry, mow the lawn, basically do anything she didn't feel like doing. The list goes on. As previously mentioned, T has fibromyalgia, which means he's in pain most of the time, and even something as simple as making the bed could leave him needing to lie down for hours afterward. Throughout his life, his mom has talked him into and out of so many situations, often against his own better judgment, starting from what subjects he chose for his secondary school exams to how he presents himself and expresses his identity. His mother has also been a major trigger for his anxiety, mainly because of the way she treats him. She insists he's the only one who can help her with his grandmother and uses guilt-tripping tactics constantly. T has openly said he cannot go through the process of watching someone he loves succumb to a terminal illness again, yet his mom continues to act like he's her only option. Basically, everything becomes an issue with her if it's not done to her liking. When we started dating, T opened up to me about her, and from the beginning, I've encouraged him to leave home because of the damage it has done to his mental and physical health. He had no safe space to talk about her behavior, but after he moved in with me in February 2025, he was finally able to open up to a therapist. Anyway, that's the backstory. In December 2024, his grandmother had a fall, and he helped her along with his mom. He told his mother on that day that he couldn't handle watching his grandmother's health deteriorate. Despite this, while I was recovering from lung surgery, T and I emptied out the front room of their house to make space for his grandmother to move in. During the move, T's mom was barking orders and trying to micromanage every step of the process. That's when I really understood what he's had to endure his whole life. After all this, the gratitude we received was practically non-existent. I only helped because I didn't want T to go through it alone. On New Year's Eve, T's mom broke her foot, which meant T and I had to stay with her for a while. During this time, I witnessed firsthand how unreasonable she could be. I occasionally smoke herbal medicine, and T's mom suggested I buy an entirely new wardrobe of clothes for when I visit her house, saying the scent made her feel nauseous. I rely entirely on disability benefits, as I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder and psychosis, so I simply can't afford to buy new clothes for something like that. I never smoked in her house or around her. The scent was just faint on my clothes. Still, she made endless comments and assigned us non-stop chores. By the end of each stay, we were always excited to come back to my place, just so we could finally rest. This went on for months, and we were becoming completely exhausted and burned out. In February 2025, we left T's mom's house for what we called our usual 4 days off, said sarcastically, but it truly felt like that. However, from that point on, we haven't returned. The reason is that T experienced a major relapse in his anxiety. He ended up sobbing in my arms and vomiting at just the thought of leaving the house. Because of this, even being in the car has become a major struggle for him, triggering chronic panic attacks. His mother has not shown any understanding regarding this and, unfortunately, has caused further damage to the already fragile relationship they had. We've also been trying to move out of my current flat because we're not happy where we are. However, T's mother insists that we should live within walking distance of her. The reality is that T and I have made plans to move to the city of York, and we have no intention of settling anywhere else. Then on the 22nd of May, 2025, his mother called to ask how the moving process was going. Right now, we're looking for any affordable place we can find with the help of my social worker. Despite this, she has been consistently recommending locations closer to her. During that call, she even asked us to move nearby so that we could give her a break from taking care of T's grandmother. She went so far as to suggest we move closer and apply for caregiver's allowance. Neither T nor I are able or willing to take on that responsibility. Our lives are already hard enough as it is, and caring for an elderly family member is not something we are equipped or mentally prepared to handle. This isn't about abandoning family, it's about the trauma, the disabilities, and the simple fact that we do not want to live near her. During this call, I lost my patience and said, "We can't pause our lives and just move where you want. T has trauma already." I barely finished the sentence before she interrupted, insisting I had misunderstood her. T was overwhelmed with anxiety, and I was absolutely fed up, emotionally exhausted from this woman and her constant assumption that her son exists solely to support her. She is his mother, and yet the roles have been completely reversed. After the phone call, T received a message from her asking to speak without me present. The point of that message was once again to claim that I had misunderstood the conversation. But I didn't misunderstand. I stood up for T, and she simply didn't like that. At this point, we are both emotionally drained by her behavior and manipulation. Any advice? Story 2. The entitled mother is my aunt, who is in her 40s. The entitled father is my aunt's husband, also in his 40s. And the entitled kid is their 16-year-old son. I have 2 laptops, one very expensive, let's call it MSI, and the older one we will call it HP, which is not a bad machine and is still sold in retail around $800. My relatives once asked me if I could lend them one of my laptops because their kid needed it for remote schooling. I was not particularly happy about it, but I was a bit pushed into it. Typical family pressure, and I agreed, and they told me they will pick it up that very same evening. They had it for about 10 months, maybe even a year. I have no idea. I don't remember when I lent it anymore. 2 weeks ago, my wife's laptop broke, and we decided that we will wait for some Christmas discounts in just a month or 2, and I called the entitled mother to tell her I will need it back and explained her the circumstances. Most importantly, that my wife now works from home and need it for work, and that schools are open now anyway. Entitled mother, I thought we could keep it since you did not ask for it back after all this time. Me, I thought you still need it for school. And what gives you the idea to pocket my stuff like this? P.S. I even forgot that they had summer break and definitely did not need it. Entitled mother, because we need a laptop as well, and you already have one. Just share it until you buy a new one. You can transfer me $400 and it's yours, or give it back by the end of the day. It is still my laptop, and it is crucial to my wife's work. $400? I am not going to buy from a family member. Where is some family solidarity? You can consider it as a Christmas gift for my son. I hear the entitled father in the background trying to whisper. Yeah, he can buy 10 laptops on the spot. He doesn't have kids. Me, I am sitting in my car right now, and the laptop better be ready when I am there. I hung up. I arrived and knocked on their door, and with a bit of anger, the entitled father opened the door. If you are here for the laptop, my son just told me he still needs it for school. Buy one. You have plenty, you should share. You know, if you perhaps asked me beforehand, I would give you a good price and agree on some friendly payment calendar. But right now, I am more inclined to call it a theft. It is not a theft, it is in the family. At this moment, I pulled out my phone and went to Microsoft account website. I stuffed the display in his face and pressed lock. He did not quite understand what I did and just stared at me. A minute later, I hear footsteps from the stairs and the boy screaming, "Dad, My laptop says it is locked. Dad, I am in the middle of a game. Me, nice school work there, eh? Now the entitled parents both stood indoors, while the son behind them was smashing enter. It looked like he thought the harder the press it could override the lock. Entitled father, see what you did. Are you enjoying yourself doing this to kids? Unlock it now, my son needs it. Entitled father, this stupid laptop does not work anymore. And he slapped the keyboard really hard with an open palm, and the battery popped out from the bottom. Entitled kid, piece of trash. He added and dropped the laptop on the ground. I think my eyes at this point popped from my head. Entitled kid, I want a new one, Dad. Entitled father, tell that to your greedy cousin. Meant me. He just storms in and want his stupid computer back. He picked the laptop and shoved it to my hands. I just added, battery and charger too, please. That was also shoved in my hand with a nice good old-fashioned door slam right after. The laptop was in a horrible state, and I do not count the fall damage. I am talking about the filth. From time to time, I also drop food onto my laptop or game while eating, but I won't let it dry and accumulate it into a crust so thick that in some places it leveled with the keys. And how could he even see over all those dry droplets on monitor? I am telling you, if you don't want something, just lend it. All this, in the past 2 weeks, escalated into a whole family circle, basically our entitled parents telling everybody how awful people we are. Answers on some of frequent comments. 1. If the laptop has legal Windows and the machine is signed in Microsoft account, you can remotely block it like with Android. 2. I made a Facebook post similar to this and tagged over 15 people from extended family. They are laughing matter now, and I feel for myself that justice was served. 3. They passed the damage threshold for me to press charges, and I'm getting a payment order from court. Story 3. When my sister found out I was eating at the hospital cafeteria, she got upset with me, saying that food is just for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. We ended up in a big argument about it, in which I told her it wasn't like I was taking food from the mouths of patients. Then she went to our parents to get them on her side, like always, and they immediately sided with her, just like I thought they would. They backed her up on how the hospital cafeteria was not a place to go eating casually, and we had a big argument. They spent days pressuring me and telling me I was wrong, and demanding I stop. So I went to the website where people share stories and ask for opinions, and there I learned that not only was I not doing anything wrong, but it's actually a very common thing for people to eat at hospital cafeterias just because they enjoy it. I hoped the situation would just fade away, but a few days later, my sister called me, asking if I had stopped eating at the hospital. I said no, and then it started all over again. My parents then called me, upset and acting like I was supposed to stop going just because they said so. I reminded them that I don't live under their roof anymore, and this is exactly the kind of reason why I moved out. They take my sister's side in almost everything. They grumbled and sighed about it. This time, the fight didn't stay at home though. Other relatives found out because my sister tried to broaden her support. She was so determined to enforce her will upon me that she went looking for help from other family members. But our parents were the only ones on her side, and my uncle personally scolded my parents and her over the phone once I told him what actually happened. He told them they were only siding with my sister because she's their favorite, and that they were being unfair parents for playing favorites to begin with. Then my cousin went to eat with me at that hospital cafeteria and said he'd like to go there once a week too, since he also works nearby and bicycles everywhere. We've run into each other at lunch there once already since then. He was actually rather pleased to find out the food was made healthier than most other places. He's a bit of a picky eater, so this place is kind of like his new lunch hangout. My sister got even angrier after finding out there were other people in the family eating at the hospital now too. Once that was out in the open, my parents backed down due to embarrassment. They apologized to me and gave me some excuse that they honestly thought eating at a hospital was strange, and that they felt like they just needed to defend my sister. I told them they'd been giving in to my sister for so long that it's all they do whenever she starts something with anyone. She's been treating me like a condescending control freak and a bully since we were teenagers, even though I'm older, and they just kept enabling that. But I won't put up with it anymore. My parents ended up conceding and apologized. Then they made my sister apologize to me too. And I could tell she hated every second of it because she tried to speak through her teeth at first. Later on, my parents invited me to dinner as another form of apology. But it felt more like a show to look good to the rest of the family, because they told everyone about it before it even happened. The dinner was great, I can't deny. My parents had cooked a turkey, arguably one of my favorite things to eat. I love the drumsticks slathered with gravy. Yeah, I kind of overindulge when I eat them, but I can't help it. My sister always thought it was hilarious, and it was one of the few things I didn't mind her laughing about. So I thought nothing of why she was so giggly at dinner. Later, after the family dinner, I noticed that my bike was missing. I'd parked it in the backyard out of sight, but it was just gone. I freaked out because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents did panic a bit with me, but my sister seemed just the opposite. She actually looked cheerful and was still giggling. I immediately suspected her, and she played innocent. She even gave the "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that" line. I already knew she's extremely petty, but this was a whole new level for her. So I said that I was going to go over to the neighbor's house because I know they have cameras, and they would have seen what happened. And then I'd call the police. My sister suddenly looked panicked, and I got mad and said I knew it was her. I demanded my bike back. She started crying and saying she didn't do anything, and our parents were immediately taking her side while scolding me for daring to accuse her. So I had enough and said I was going to the neighbor's house to ask to check their cameras, and then I'd be calling law enforcement. My sister finally admitted the truth and called me to come back. The looks on our parents' faces after they'd just defended her were priceless. My sister said she was just so angry at me for having made her apologize for something she still believed she was right about. So she planned to have a couple of her friends come and grab my bike during dinner. She said her friends were in a minivan with it just down the street. She then started saying that I couldn't call the police on her anyway, because I'm her big brother. Our parents backed that up too. But I pulled out my phone and started marching outside again. They ran after me with my sister begging and crying for me to stop. I called her a brat, and then I told my parents I couldn't believe they were still defending her when she was acting this way. They said it wasn't that they were defending her, but that they didn't want to see the police get involved over a misunderstanding. I asked what part of this they thought was a misunderstanding, and then my sister suddenly said she'd go get my bike back herself. I told her she wasn't touching it again once I got it back, and that I wanted to inspect it for any possible damage. She actually had the audacity to say, "It's just a bike," and I said, "That's my car, I use it to get to work." Her friends drove the bike back, and I gave them a death stare when they put it back in my hands. Then I started inspecting it right there. And while it wasn't damaged, the chain had been popped off the gear, the seat had been lowered, and there was food smeared on the handlebars. It looked like maybe peanut butter, but I didn't touch it to check. My sister didn't say anything when I pointed that out. She just started crying again. I took photos of everything, then said I was still filing a report, and that made her panic even more. Our parents pleaded with me to reconsider. I said no. Then I went to the neighbor's house, showed them the peanut butter smeared handlebars, and asked if they had footage of the people taking my bike. And they did. We watched the footage together. It showed a red minivan with 3 people getting out and entering the yard. Then one of them brought out my bike while the others stood watch. One of them looked like my sister's friend Lisa, but the footage wasn't very clear. However, the red minivan and the timestamp were enough. So I called law enforcement and told them everything. My sister freaked out when they arrived. She got loud and emotional, and the police had to warn her to calm down. Then she tried blaming her friends entirely, but when asked if she gave them permission or not, she refused to answer. I showed the officers the footage, and they told me it would help. My sister was issued a citation, and was told she could potentially face a misdemeanor charge. And her friends, if caught, could face the same or worse, depending on if I wanted to press further. After the officers left, my sister ran to her car and sped off. My parents looked like they were trying not to cry. I didn't want to talk to them anymore, so I just loaded my bike up on my small car rack and drove home. The next day, my sister came to my apartment sobbing and tried to guilt me into dropping everything. She said she was probably going to lose her job if her boss finds out about the police citation. She works at a daycare, and anything involving police contact is taken seriously there. I told her that was her own doing, and she shouldn't have messed with my bike. She tried saying I'd ruined her life and that I was a heartless monster. I said she did this to herself, and that I wasn't going to just roll over and let her get away with it like our parents always did. She told me I was dead to her and stormed off. My cousin came over later and brought me lunch. He gave me a pat on the back for standing my ground and told me our family has needed someone to do that for a long time. He told me that when he was younger, my sister used to take his stuff and get away with it because she was just a kid, even though they were the same age. And when he complained, he got in trouble while she got comforted. That brought back some memories for me too. And I realized this behavior of hers has gone unchecked for way too long. Since then, my parents have been reaching out, asking me to forgive my sister and work things out. But I've been ignoring their messages. They've even shown up at my place a couple of times, but I didn't let them in. I told them I needed space, and they should respect that. I'm finally starting to feel like I have some peace in my life, and I'm not letting that go just because someone else doesn't like being held accountable for their actions. Story 4. This happened several years ago when I worked as a construction project manager for a company that serviced retail point-of-sale systems. The job involved everything from adding or removing a register to installing all of the electronics in a newly constructed store. One year, I took a camping and off-road vacation in a remote area and was supposed to meet some friends. They called me to inform me that they were about 6 hours late. Since I knew some people at the local grocery store where I had recently finished doing the information technology remodeling, I walked over to say hi. When I got there, I found that half of their front end was down. The manager asked if I could help, and since I was just passing the time, I told him yes if my boss approved the overtime. Anyone who worked in the field was paid hourly. The overtime was approved, and it quickly became apparent that the issue was caused by the cleaning contractor, who had dismantled registers the night before to make it easier to clean, which was a violation of their contract. I fixed all but 2 lanes, and those had damaged power and data cables. I told the manager I could fix them with parts from the local True Value hardware store and Radio Shack if he would reimburse me. I also asked if I could park my truck in the vendor-only spot, since his parking lot was full and I would need some tools I carried in my truck. He agreed, so I got my truck, picked up the items I needed, and parked in the vendor spot. This is important. Both registers needed the cabinets dismantled in order to replace the damaged cables. I fixed the first lane and got it operational. Then I moved to the second lane, which was right in front of the customer service desk. I made sure the closed sign was up and used a 6-wheeled cart that was loaded with a special order to block the register. I was lying under the register belt in order to connect the new cables to the register base when someone kicked me. They kicked me again, so I instinctively lashed out with my steel-toed boot and accidentally hit a woman in the knee. She dropped to the ground, screaming briefly, and was knocked unconscious when she hit her head on the cart she had moved. What happened was that she decided my lane should be open. She moved the cart, tossed the closed sign on the floor, and kicked me for ignoring her. What she failed to notice was that there was a local police officer at the customer service desk asking if they wanted the lifted truck in the vendor spot ticketed. The manager was directing him to where I was to see if it belonged to me, and they both saw the woman kicking me. The officer called an ambulance for the woman and then asked if I wanted to press charges, which I did. The store also pressed charges, as she had been banned and was violating a no trespassing order. She later pled guilty to the trespass and a misdemeanor assault charge after being informed that a police officer had witnessed the attack and that it had been recorded on the security camera. My employer's legal team informed me that I was being subpoenaed for a deposition because she was suing both companies for compensation, claiming that I had broken her kneecap and given her a concussion. A week later, I was told this was canceled, as the judge had dismissed the case with prejudice due to her having initiated the violence, according to the police report. Story 5. Some 20 years ago, I found myself working in a small manufacturing company in what was my first job out of college. There were a few red flags during the interview process which I dutifully ignored as I was desperate for my first real job. Being a small family company, the role consisted of basically 3 jobs rolled into one, which was production scheduling, procurement, and inventory control. On my first day on the job, I learnt the person hiring me had already quit. The person training me had 2 days left at the company, and the average length of employment for my position was 4 or 5 months. They warned me that the CEO was a micromanaging psycho. I reasoned with my naive self that the guys on the floor were just hazing the new guy. I met the CEO, Chad, later that day, and we got along fine for the first 3 months. The thing about this factory is that they were gaining business fast and were ramping up production by buying new equipment and hiring more workers. The business was in a large growth stage. As we live in a small, impoverished, and isolated country, we had to buy our raw materials from overseas, which had a shipping time of 3 months. I modeled the trajectory of sales and moved to order materials every month so that we had a pipeline of materials coming in at regular intervals. When Chad discovered this, he yelled at me and told me to cancel the orders. His reasoning was we did not need that much raw materials, and it was a waste of cash flow. I did as I was told as I was new to the company and thought, surely the CEO should know his business better than I, right? Well, for the rest of the time I was working there, we were always running short on materials. I'd always have to problem solve when we ran out of materials, such as offering free expensive upgrades with more expensive material we had in stock to our customers. The thing that really irked Chad was that I was constantly ordering raw materials from our competitors. I built a good rapport with these companies, and they enjoyed charging us an arm and a leg for their materials. By the time my 1-year mark at the company came around, Chad absolutely detested me and would come to my workstation on a regular basis to berate me for not doing my job properly, questioning my integrity, threatening my job, and even accusing me of theft of raw materials. Being a fresh new grad, I'd kept quiet and just took it on the chin as he cussed me out. All the while thinking, I'm the one busting a gut here working 3 roles and getting product out the door while you make stupid decisions which I always have to clean up. The entire factory shop floor staff hated Chad. He had a window in his office on the 2nd floor overlooking the factory. He would stand there with his arms crossed looking at the plebs working below. Every second day he would go on a warpath into the factory floor to yell and threaten staff. As winter rolled around, we had a large order come in from one of our biggest customers, which required a large quantity of expensive and bulky raw material. Chad instructed me to order 3 containers of raw materials for the job, which I did straight away. A few days later, I realized I was getting shakes on the Sunday before coming into work as I was stressed, dreading the new incoming week. The next day, I put in my notice for 2 weeks without securing another job. I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and I felt in control of my life again. I slept very well that night. To this day, I still think it was one of the best decisions I have made in my life, as I put my mental health ahead of a steady income. Thankfully, I had an understanding partner. A couple of days later, I got a call from our supplier saying they couldn't manufacture and deliver the 3 containers of expensive raw materials for us and canceled the order. A familiar feeling of dread washed over me as I know I'll have to inform Chad of the cancellation, and I am sure to get chewed out again for no apparent reason. I sat on this for a few days trying to gather enough courage to have a conversation with Chad about the problem. When there was about 1 more week left on my notice period, I was summoned into a meeting with Chad and one of his advisors. They wanted to discuss a handover plan for my poor successor. As we were wrapping up the meeting, I braced myself as I was about to inform him of our upcoming shortage in materials when he looked up from his documents and asked, "Did you place the order for 3 containers of X materials?" I pause and suddenly realize that this is it. Here is my out. I stall, pretending to think, then say, "Yes, I placed that order last week right after our meeting." I just chose not to tell him about the cancellation. He didn't ask after all. The rest of my time there was uneventful and stress-free, and as I left to go to the car park on my last day, I flipped off the company logo on the side of the building and went on my merry way. The fallout. Now, these raw materials were bulky, as in, they needed a crane to move them around. The reason why we buy so large and in bulk is because it is more cost-efficient. By the time they found out about the cancellation of the special order, it was too late. My friend who still worked there informed me that they had to scramble to find materials and buy from our competitors at inflated prices. The problem was that our competitors only had materials that were not of optimum size, so there was huge wastage. I'm talking many tons, and a lot of overtime was required as they were really awkward in size to handle. At the end of the job, Chad let it slip at a staff meeting that yours truly had cost the company an extra $600 KST for that little bit of non-information sharing. I drove by the factory 4 years later and found that it was shut down. Story 6. A few minutes later, I started to notice that I was having trouble breathing. I've had asthma for most of my life, and not just mild asthma, but severe asthma, so you can imagine how important it is that I have my inhaler with me at all times. Anyway, I begin to realize I'm struggling to breathe, so I pull out my inhaler and am just about to use it when I feel someone's hand rip it out of mine. Take a wild guess who it was. CK had gotten up and actually grabbed my inhaler from me. For obvious reasons, I start panicking, thinking, what in the world is happening? CK starts talking. What would your parents think if they knew that you were doing drugs? She waited for a response, but I was too busy gasping for air to give one. Not responding, "You should show me some respect." CK finally looks down at the floor, which is where I'm now sitting, and for some reason it still didn't click to her that it was my inhaler. "Oh my goodness, you are so dramatic, you little druggie. I don't even know why I'm trying to help you." By now, someone with more sense than CK comes over and realizes what's going on. He says, "What on earth are you doing? Give this girl her inhaler back, you jerk." The man tries to grab the inhaler from her, but she pulls back and screams, "He's trying to hurt me, somebody help." No one helped. The man grabbed her arm, yanked the inhaler out of her hand, and pushed her away. He handed it back to me and helped me get up. I guess it finally dawned on her what she had done, because she got off the train at the next stop without saying another word. Someone asked me if I wanted to call the police on her, but she was long gone by then.